Watch Jim Jordan's explosive speech exposing Adam Schiff and James Comey of high crimes.
As is customary, we will begin with opening statements. 5 weeks ago, because of the work of Director Patel, we learned that the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information. We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. Whistleblower with 23 years experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee, said this: they were pressured to leak classified information, which sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that committee, who's supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of classified information? Whistleblower told us that answer as well. The leaked information was supposed to be used, the leaked information, false information, was going to be used to indict President Trump. Now, the former chairman wasn't the only person leaking information. Jim Comey was also sharing things he wasn't supposed to share. Again, don't take my word for it. The Inspector General told us this. In his report, he said, quote, James Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information. And what was Comey's motive? Same as the senator from California: to sabotage and undermine President Trump's first term. And we know that Mr. Comey's not been shy about what his objective was. In fact, 4 months ago, he told us. Remember this? 8647. Jim Comey told us just 4 months ago. Now, how'd they do it? How did the former chair of the intel community, the former FBI director, and others in our government attempt to undermine President Trump's first term? 7 weeks ago, because of the good work of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we learned from another whistleblower, a second whistleblower, that in the closing days of the Obama administration, the intelligence community assessment was changed. On December 5th, 2016, they had one assessment. That assessment said Russia did not impact the election vote count. There was a meeting at the White House on December 9th, 2016, where it was decided, no, we're not going to have that. We're going to come up with a new one. And the new one said Russia was trying to influence election and did influence election, which just wasn't accurate. And that new one is published on January 6, 2017. Let's just show you a few things that took place. I want to show you first this email from Admiral Rogers, the head of the NSA. You can see it was December 22nd. Says to Jim, John, and Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Jim Comey. And he says, I asked my team if they've had sufficient access to the underlying intelligence, sufficient time to review that intelligence. On both points, my team raised concern. Further states, my folks aren't fully comfortable. A few hours later, there's an email back to Admiral Rogers. This one is from Jim Clapper, and it says this: it is essential that we be on the same page and all of us are supportive of the report in the highest tradition of, that's our story and we're sticking to it. We may have to compromise on our normal modalities. This is one project that has to be a team sport. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. Compromise on normal modalities, that's a fancy way of saying, that's the government speak for we're going to have to change the rules. In fact, we're not going to follow our own rules. And that's exactly what they did to get the objective they wanted, to undermine President Trump. Now, how did it specifically take place? The whistleblower said that the government officials ignored concerns about discredited information. And what was that discredited information? What was the discredited information that they didn't ignore the concerns about? What did they use, that discredited information? Of course, it was the dossier, the now famous Steele dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign when they hired the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired the foreigner Christopher Steele, who wrote all this garbage and lies down. That is what was used to change the intelligence community report. And what happens next? What do Jim, John, and Jim do next? They go to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017, to brief then President-elect Trump about the dossier. Again, the Clinton-financed, foreign-authored dossier that the whistleblower knows is garbage and that they know is garbage. And then there's one final step. One final step. Jim Comey leaves that meeting with the president and immediately leaks to the press that they briefed the president on the discredited information. They briefed the president on the dossier and thereby given it some credibility and creating the basis and the predicate for all they did to the president. They leaked false information, they leaked classified information, they used and leaked discredited information, and they didn't follow their own rules, all to sabotage President Trump's first term. And but for this guy, Kash Patel, but for this guy, we would never have known this information. The good people of this great country would not have known what took place 8 years ago when they were trying to undermine the guy elected by we the people. And I want to thank Attorney General Bondi. She set up a special strike force, a special team to look into this and see if there's any criminal liability that exists in what took place. Now, in addition to getting the truth to the people, Director Patel is getting the bad guys off the street.
The reason this matters so much is because Jordan wasn't just throwing opinions around. He was pointing directly at whistleblower testimony, Inspector General findings, internal intelligence emails, and the timeline surrounding the Russia investigation that dominated Trump's first term. For years, Americans were told that Donald Trump was the center of some massive conspiracy with Russia. The media treated it like established fact. Adam Schiff went on television over and over again implying he had evidence the public hadn't seen. Networks ran with it nonstop. Commentators told Americans democracy itself was under attack. And now Jordan is arguing that key figures inside the intelligence community were actually manipulating information behind the scenes to create that narrative in the first place. The part about Adam Schiff is especially damaging because Jordan framed it around the responsibility of the House Intelligence Committee. That committee is supposed to protect classified information, not weaponize it politically. According to the whistleblower Jordan referenced, Schiff allegedly pressured staff to leak classified information specifically to help damage Trump. Think about how serious that accusation is. If true, that means the very people trusted with guarding national security secrets were using those secrets as political ammunition. Then Jordan moved to James Comey, and this is where the story becomes even bigger because Comey has always tried to portray himself as the principled defender of institutions. But Jordan reminded everyone that the Inspector General already concluded Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information. That's not some partisan talking point. That came from an official investigation. Jordan's argument is simple. The same people who lectured Americans endlessly about protecting democracy and respecting institutions were willing to bend rules when it helped hurt Trump. And Jordan connected all of it back to the infamous Steele dossier. Remember how huge that story was? For years, Democrats, cable news hosts, and anti-Trump commentators treated the dossier like it was legitimate intelligence. But the dossier was funded through opposition research tied to Hillary Clinton's campaign. It was filled with claims that were never verified, and many parts completely collapsed under scrutiny. Yet Jordan says officials still used it anyway, despite knowing there were serious credibility concerns. The email Jordan read from Admiral Rogers is one of the most revealing parts of the entire speech. Rogers was basically warning that NSA analysts were uncomfortable with the intelligence assessment and didn't think they had enough access or time to properly review the underlying intelligence. That should have stopped everything right there. Instead, according to Jordan, officials pushed forward anyway. Then comes the response from James Clapper saying everyone needed to be on the same page, and that they may need to compromise on normal modalities. Jordan seized on that phrase because to a lot of Americans it sounds like bureaucratic language for ignoring the normal rules and procedures to achieve a political outcome. That's the core of his argument. Not that mistakes were made accidentally, but that the system itself was intentionally bent to target Trump. And remember the timing here. Trump hadn't even taken office yet. Before his presidency officially started, the intelligence community assessment had already been revised, the Russian narrative was exploding across the media, and the dossier briefing at Trump Tower conveniently leaked almost immediately afterward. Jordan argues that leak was the spark that allowed media outlets to justify publicly reporting on the dossier, even though many knew it was shaky. What makes this speech politically powerful is that it taps into something millions of Americans already suspect. They watched years of investigations, endless headlines, special counsels, impeachment fights, and media hysteria surrounding Trump, only for many of the biggest accusations to either collapse or fail to deliver what Democrats promised. So when Jordan says government officials manipulated intelligence and leaked information to undermine Trump, a huge portion of the country is ready to believe it because they already lost trust in these institutions years ago. And this is why the establishment gets nervous whenever these hearings happen. Because even if only part of what Jordan is alleging turns out to be true, it raises massive questions about abuse of power inside the intelligence community and federal law enforcement. Americans are supposed to believe these agencies operate above politics, but Jordan's entire speech was built around the idea that some officials stopped acting like neutral public servants and started acting like political operatives. The media reaction will probably be predictable. They'll say Jordan is defending Trump. They'll say Republicans are relitigating old fights. They'll say this is partisan revenge. But what they won't want to discuss is why so many Americans no longer trust the people who pushed the Russian narrative in the first place. That distrust didn't appear out of nowhere. It came from years of contradictions, leaks, failed predictions, and investigations that often seemed more focused on headlines than facts. And politically, this could not come at a worse time for Democrats. Trump is back in the White House, Republicans are aggressively investigating the origins of the Russia probe again, and public confidence in legacy media is already at historic lows. Every time speeches like this go viral, it reopens the debate over whether the intelligence community crossed lines during Trump's first term. Jordan knows exactly what he's doing here. He's not just defending Trump personally. He's framing the entire Russia investigation as an example of a corrupt political establishment trying to stop an outsider president. And whether people agree with him or not, that argument still resonates with millions of voters because it fits the broader feeling that Washington operates by one set of rules for insiders and another for everyone else. One thing is certain after this speech, Republicans are not letting this story die. They want Americans revisiting every leak, every intelligence assessment, every media narrative, and every decision made during those chaotic months after the 2016 election. And judging by the reaction online, a lot of people are more than willing to hear that case again. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Do you think Jim Jordan exposed something serious here, or is this just another political battle in Washington? Let me know what you think.